Looks like we're a little bit light on attendance today, but they are still coming in, but we'll get going as we have a pretty tight schedule. I must apologize, I've got to run out the door shortly after 5 o'clock. We have a 4:40 presentation from our lawyer coming in for the first bit of reception for the committee's year. So moving along into the agenda, I think one of the first things we need to do is welcome and introductions. And we have some new faces and a lot of old faces, but you know, for the benefit of the new faces, let's go around the room and introduce ourselves. My name is Ryan Richards. I was chairman last year. I'm a partner with RG Architects, and I've been on the Construction Advisory Committee for about 10 years.
Scott Wolf, I was on the committee last year, glad to be back this year. Local real estate broker, don't hold that against me, and looking forward to another good year.
And Art Castellanos, architect, Castellanos Tremonti Architects. Been here a long time, so just here to help out where I can.
Bob Taylor, ADG Architects, president, one of the principals there. This is my second season working with the CAC committee. It's been an awesome experience for me, and I hope to see what happens this year too.
Darren Watkins, civil engineer, work for Thomas Marine Construction. We're a local bridge builder. I've been on this committee for 6-7 years.
Jack McStravick, I work for GFA International, Code Compliance Manager, new to the board.
John Huther, Gulf Point Construction, new to the board.
Shelley Thimler, retired administrator from School District of Lee County, and I think this is like my third year maybe on the board.
Tanya Prophet, Lee County School District for Dunbar Community School, first year.
Well, welcome to the new members, and looking forward to another productive season. Our next item on the agenda is a brief training video, training with our board attorney, and it's intended to take about 20 minutes, and we are about 4 minutes ahead of schedule. So with that, do we want to jump that gun and go straight to public comment? Not seeing any members of the public here, of which we are not a part. Approval of the minutes from the 2019. If anyone has a set of minutes in front of them, I believe. Oh, okay, you don't have it in front of you. Fine, thank you, Pat. It should have been in your email earlier. One of the, it's a little odd starting on the 18th, and that's primarily due to the board season, getting the names approved by board action in September. So our next meeting is only 2 weeks from now, and our standing meetings are always the first Wednesday of the month at 4:30. So this one is kind of in an awkward spot where we don't have a lot to talk about. We have a lot of introduction and formality to go through. And after that, I'd like everyone to take a little bit of time and think about what we would like to discuss this year, what the board members would personally like to see. And, that could be tabled for the next meeting, but, just put that on your own personal agenda. You have 2 weeks to think about it. But we have a whole schedule to plan out this year. And I believe that our first meeting in October is probably the best time to do that. So if there's a task you'd like to see the committee address, that would be the time to bring that up. Real briefly, do we want to go into election of the chairs while we have some time? Let's do the minutes. Oh, I got
I'll make a motion to approve.
So we have a motion to approve from Darren Walken, seconded by Tanya, I apologize, Prophet. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approves the minutes unanimously. We still have a few minutes before we are entitled. We'll move on to election of chair, vice chair for this year. Is there any recommendations from the committee on who they'd like to see, volunteers? Anybody care to step up and say, I have to have it this year? I'm looking at you, Darren.
I don't know. I'm here every meeting, so it doesn't.
I'm sorry?
I said I have nominated you because you've been doing it for a while now, so you kind of pro.
I knew we should have saved it till after I left.
He was hoping to get out of here after that 20 minutes of that lawyer talk.
I've got one for myself and any others. Dang it. Good evening, Mr. Giovanelli. And nominations for vice chair. Do we need to vote on one first? Yep. All right.
Well, I'll second the motion well, nominate Ryan.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Darren.
You're welcome.
I will remember that. So we have a motion to make me chairman again this year. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And landslide.
Or again.
Yeah, approved unanimously. I will retain the position of chair this year. Thank you, Ms. Johnson. And we're moving on to election of vice chair. And Darren has done a phenomenal job the last couple of years, so I will not let that go unnoticed.
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion for Darren Watkins as a vice chair.
Second.
Seconded by Scott Wolf. Any others? All right, so we'll go to vote. All in favor of Darren Watkins being this year's vice chair?
Aye.
Opposed? Looks like another unanimous calling.
Here you vote.
Oh, aye.
Aye. So I'd like to welcome Ms. Giovanelli.
Thank you.
Sneaking in quietly from the back. We have a scheduled 4:40 appointment with the board attorney. Would we like Ms. Giovanelli's part to be put in front of that, or do we save her to the end?
And I quit because I don't really have anything. I'm excited to just be back and get back in the swing of things, so, and get caught back up, so, because I missed a couple meetings being out of town with other things, so.
Understood.
The only thing that I had was the letter that everybody has a copy of, and that's for them to read, and we'll talk about next meeting. It'll be on the agenda, so right now, tonight, we're not even gonna talk about it, so.
Informational, we all have a letter from BSSW. You're more than welcome to take that home, consider it, mull it at your own leisure, and we will put it on the agenda for the October committee meeting. And I apologize to everyone else already here. You may have missed it, but I've got to hit the door with my hair on fire in about 15, 20 minutes or so.
The approval of the meeting dates.
And the meeting dates. Our meetings have typically been, historically been, the first Wednesday of every month at 4:30. There has been some adjustment to make times more considerate for people in their particular work schedule. I would suggest that I think we've balanced it as best we could for most people, unless there's some serious heartburn on a different day or a different time.
The lawyer's patched in, so whenever you're ready.
I heard it.
Can you hear us, Chris?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
We can, thank you.
Okay. Just let me know when I can,
Yes, if we may, we have about 2 minutes worth of schedule confirmation to go through before we will jump into your part of the agenda, if that's okay.
Sure, absolutely, sounds good.
So, back to the committee at large, are we good with the Wednesday, 3:30, first Wednesday, 4:30, I apologize, of first Wednesday of every month? Or would anyone like to see some adjustment to that timeline?
I mean,
Good.
we changed it 2 years ago from, it used to be at 2:30 in the afternoon, but we moved it back to 4:30 to accommodate. We wanted to move it back to let people get off of work a little early, or, earlier to get here, but then also not be here real late, like most other construction, or most other committees meet real late at night, so we're not taking up time, family time with everybody here, so.
Yeah, it's trying to hit that gap in between work and family time so that, you're not missing the kids' dinner
Right.
and you're not leaving the office early. So we try to wiggle that right in between. And,
Yeah, 'cause if I'm not mistaken, I think all the other committees meet in the evening, in the evening, so.
all right.
So January 1st is a Wednesday. It's the first Wednesday.
It seems like we have a consensus. We could probably put it to a vote right now, get it over with. If everyone's, can I get a motion to retain the meetings at 4:30 on the first Wednesday of every month?
I make a motion to maintain the meetings at 4:30 first Wednesday.
Motion made by Mr. McStravick, seconded by Mr. Taylor. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So be it. Thank you very much. Motion passes unanimously, and with that, we will move on to the board attorney for advisory committee training.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Listen, I want to apologize for not being there in person. I had some medical issues, and she's in the hospital, so I could not make it out there today, and I really do apologize. I plan on being there. I was looking forward to meeting all of you. So what we are going to do, and let me know if I'm too loud or too low. If you can't hear me, just feel free to yell at me. It's totally fine. I apologize for it being like Oz at the moment. But what we're going to do is we're going to run through a little bit about the organization of the committee meetings. We're going to talk a little bit about ethics and conflict of interest, sunshine law, public records, and Robert's Rules of Order, which it sounds like there may be some familiarity with already. So I apologize if any of this is redundant, but it's really just to make sure that everybody starts off on the same page and on the right foot. We'll start first with the organization of the committee meetings, which you may be familiar with a little bit. Generally, every committee in the school board has a process for appointing a certain number of members, and so you've each been appointed by an individual school board member. So the term is typically 2 years. And depending on what the committee, what the committee's sort of goals are, you may have people from different disciplines. You may have people from different backgrounds. So the purpose of this committee, is to provide input, advice, and support for the capital plan. And that is really behind your sort of formation. Each committee has to select a chair and a vice chair. So the goal or the role of both the chair and the vice chair is really to kind of guide the work of the committee, conduct the meetings, and meet with your board member liaison to establish the agenda for the meeting. Each committee has staff liaisons as well. The superintendent will assign a staff liaison, sometimes up to 3, depending on what's going on or what's coming before the committee. And as you've done, each committee at their first meeting has to establish their future meeting dates and their times for when they're going to meet. They've got to work out their rules for public comment and to elect a chair and a vice chair. So meetings, as you may already know, since you set your schedule, they've got to occur at a certain time, at least once a month, between September and April. And there's reporting requirements for each committee. So quarterly, a committee report should be presented to the school board. And usually that's done by the chair or the vice chair, depending on who's available at the time. So, that's basically sort of the gist of the committee. Policy 1.20 outlines it, in detail. So if you have any questions about your particular role, I would definitely suggest that you refer to that. But as committee members, the law takes their role very seriously, which, as the returning members, you may know. The school board is made up of elected officials, so are cities and counties, and you're essentially viewed as being sort of arms of those members. So you are considered public officials for the role that you serve as a committee member. And so that means that you are subject to the same rules and regulations that any elected official would be subject to. And that includes, the ethics rules and, the statutes that govern conflict of interest. So one of the things that you've got to look out for is, when you get an agenda, and you're looking it over and you see, maybe you didn't know, but you see that, maybe your employer has an item that's coming before you. Now you're a recommending body. You make recommendations for the school board to consider. You're not the school board, but you still have this sort of, this authority and power that the law, wants to be mindful of, which means that they want to make sure that you are looking out for the district, that you're looking out for the school board, that you're voting in the best interest of the school board of Lee County. So if you see something, that's coming before the committee, and maybe it's your employer, or maybe it's it's a business that a family member owns, you're going to want to abstain from voting in that regard. You're not going to want to put a vote down. You can't participate in the discussion. The law makes that clear. That in order to sort of preserve the public trust, you want to sort of avoid any appearance of a conflict. So if you do end up in that situation, there's ways to sort of address it. You want to disclose the fact that there is a conflict. So ideally, in an ideal situation, that's something that you do prior to the meeting. In writing, there may be a form for you to fill out that sort of outlines that conflict, and you want to make sure that it's part of the public record. That's the ideal world. That's what I would certainly encourage all of you to do. But in the event that, for some reason, it doesn't dawn upon you until, you're sitting up there on the dais and you're wondering, oh gosh, what am I going to do? Disclosing it at the meeting should be fine too. So, you want to make sure that you don't vote on it. You want to make sure you don't participate in the discussion, but, you have to be recognized by the chair, and say, hey, I think this may be a conflict. I'm going to abstain from the vote, and this is a conflict, and you just explain it a little bit. If you've got a business of your own, or you've got family, like I said, that that is doing business with the district, that can definitely be a conflict. And generally, you don't want to enter into a contract with the district if there's a material ownership interest in the business, or if you serve or your family member serves as an officer of the business. That can be considered definitely a conflict of interest. The Florida Commission on Ethics enforces the state ethics laws, and so if there are opinions that we can search for guidance, and there is the opportunity to ask an opinion of them. That can take some doing. So if there's something that you foresee as being a potential conflict, letting your staff liaison know as soon as possible is the best route to take. I'm going to stop right there just for a second to see if anybody has any questions before I move on.
I would like to take the opportunity to point out we failed to introduce our staff liaison at our introduction, Mr. Scott Rickenbacher, sitting in the back row.
I apologize. I should have said Scott's name too. Hey, Scott.
No worries. Thank you.
Is there any other questions or comments? All right. I'll keep on moving. So the ethics portion, that's definitely a big deal. It's definitely something that's important to consider. But I find that a lot of issues, particularly for committees, tend to arise from the public meetings sunshine law statute. Now, a little bit of background. The sunshine law is basically the law that the Florida legislature put in place that requires all business that's going to be done for the public and in the interest of the public to be done in the sunshine, which is a bit of a joke, you know, a little bit of a bad joke, but the sunshine law is actually one of the broader open meetings laws in the country. And, you know, the real goal there is public trust. And basically what it means is that if you've got a committee member, if you've got two committee members on the same committee, and they want to talk about committee business, it's got to be done in the sunshine. Now, what does it mean to be done in the sunshine? That means that you've got a duly noticed public meeting, like the one that we're at right now, that is open to the public, and that minutes are taken. Those are really the components that comprise a public meeting. This means, though, that when you are, you know, a lot of us work through email now. You know, it means if you send an email to another committee member, and that committee member responds, that's a violation of the sunshine law. If you speak on the phone, if you text each other, if you Facebook message each other, Snapchat, or you know, or DM each other on Twitter, or tweet at each other, you know, any sort of use of social media, and it has to do with committee business, that could be a violation. That is a violation of the sunshine law. If it's unrelated to committee business, so you know, if you're talking about, you know, you're going to meet up at the golf course, or you know, you're talking about a Christmas party. If you're in a different organization, if you're like a member of the Kiwanis together, and you're talking about that type of stuff, that's not a violation of the sunshine law. They try to recognize the fact that, you know, as local committee members, as local officials, you know, you're going to run into each other. You know, you might see each other in public. You know, you might run into each other in a parking lot somewhere. That's totally fine. The issue becomes when you start talking about committee business. So you want to make sure that you avoid that at all costs. Generally, there's an agenda that's prepared for a meeting, and that's provided to the public. That way the public knows what's going on at the meeting. So they have the opportunity to make a decision about whether or not they want to show up, whether or not they're curious, whether or not they support an item that's going to be decided, whether or not it's going to be something they oppose. That's usually what the purpose of the agenda is for. All the members are required to vote unless you've got a conflict of interest. So that means you can't abstain. You got to vote yea or nay. Interesting little wrinkle for us is, you know, while the sunshine law requires 2 or 4 members for there to be a sunshine law violation, the committee can meet without a quorum, which means that, you know, there doesn't necessarily have to be a simple majority of membership in order for business to be conducted, and that's allowed. You know, it's unique. A lot of committees sort of follow Robert's rules to the T, and Robert's rules does require a quorum to have business conducted. So that's something, you know, to keep in mind as you go forward. And this also applies to any sort of meeting too, the sunshine law. So if you've got, you know, if you're going to take a site visit, that's something that has to be done just like any other public meeting if there's going to be at least 2 of you there. And really, if there's 1 of you there, I'd probably still say. But you know, if you're planning on meeting somewhere other than the pit, you know, for any other reason, you should definitely have that noticed. Public comment is required to be permitted. You've got to give the opportunity for the public to speak at some point on the agenda. The chair usually has a discretion for where that goes on the agenda. You go at the beginning, go at the middle, go at the end. It doesn't matter as long as it's there. The other way that the public is entitled to sort of follow the business of, of, of the committee is through public records. And again, the statutes that govern public records are pretty broad. They are some of the broader in the country. That generally means that if it's connected with committee business, it's a public record. There are exceptions. There's lots of exceptions. There's a book of exceptions, actually, but that's the general rule, and it is broad. And the exceptions are there for things like, Social Security numbers or, or medical information, things that are protected by, by federal statutes. There are others. There's lots of others, but those are kind of like the general gist. You're not really going to be able to find a loophole just because there are a lot of exemptions. You've got to provide the records within a reasonable time. So, you may, somebody may contact you asking, requesting, the past agendas from the committee. That's fine. It's a public record. It definitely is a public record, and you've got to provide that in a reasonable time. The statute, in its esteemed wisdom, does not define reasonable time. I'd imagine that there was a lawyer that was involved in making sure that wasn't defined. But generally we try to make sure that we get those done as expeditiously as possible. If it's a lot of records, staff can charge for staff time and for copies in putting the records together. And if the person requesting doesn't want to pay, then the records don't have to be produced. It doesn't matter why a person asks for records, and you can't force them to put it in writing. They don't have to identify themselves either. Somebody can make an anonymous public records request. One of the little caveats with regards to public records is, we're not required to create a record. So if somebody asks you for, something that the committee either didn't have put together, or staff didn't have put together, if it's not already a record, we don't have to make it one. Let's see. So so one of the other things that has to do with public records is the ability to redact. So if you've got if you have a record that is considered a public record, but there's stuff in there that we would consider an exemption, like, hey, this falls into this exemption, we don't have to disclose it. We do have the ability to redact it. So if you receive a public records request, really the number one sort of the golden rule would just be to contact Scott, let him know, and we can handle it from there, through our communications department with a public records manager, and we can sort of guide you through that process. The last thing, which sounds like some of you also have familiarity with, is Robert's Rules. This is how work gets done in most public meetings with most public bodies. There are other bodies of rules. Robert's Rules is the most common. I guess I'm a little bit of a Robert's Rules nerd, just to give you a little background if you've ever heard. It was named after a guy named Henry Roberts, who was, I believe he was a graduate of the Citadel. He went around the country watching how meetings were conducted and realized sort of everybody was sort of following their own rules. So naturally he had a problem with that, and he decided to come up with his own rule book. It was so thick and voluminous that he couldn't find a publisher at the outset once he was done writing it. So he ended up publishing it himself. And lo and behold, it's become the most popular way that, at least in this country, that rules or the meetings have been conducted. So it's been adopted by the school board with the quorum exception that I'd mentioned. And the rules don't have to be rigidly enforced. The goal is to make sure that substantive work gets done. That is, the rules are there to guide. They're there to create some structure and efficiency, to make sure that maintain a little bit of fairness. But ultimately, if the form gets in front of the substance, that's not really the goal of Robert's Rules. There are roles that are governed by by the rules. So as you already have, you have a chair and a vice chair in the event that the chair can't be there, and their role is to call the meeting to order, preserve decorum so that everybody acts professionally, call to order, a member who needs to be redirected, to discuss, the issue at hand, and sort of things like that. They're there to really make sure that there's an orderly process to the meeting. The chair is the one who recognizes who speaks. So if you want to speak, you raise your hand, or if you've got buttons, I'm sorry, I'm not there to see. You request to be recognized, and the chair will recognize you. You shouldn't be interrupted unless you're being called to order. Once you stop speaking, you yield the floor. Generally, the chair shouldn't allow a member to speak twice on the same issue, but the rules are made to be flexible for different sizes of bodies, of governing bodies. So, I think that a lot of times you'd see that rule enforced with a body that's like the size of like Congress or the legislature. In order for time, in the interest of time to make sure business actually gets done, they don't want you to speak twice. That's something that, that's a consideration. The smaller the board, that rule tends to be a little bit more informal. But the chair should try to, expedite business, make sure that everybody stays on track and remain as objective as possible. You're expected to attend regularly. There's, as I said at the outset, 3 absences, can ultimately result in your removal from the committee. Having participation is really important. That's why the committee was founded. The school board wants to make sure that they hear from the community and make sure that we hear from the people that that care about the issues that are before the committee. So regular attendance is really important. Try your best. I know we're all busy, and we all have stuff come up. But to review the agenda and all the reading materials, as much as you can, make sure that you come prepared. And make sure that you have your ideas ready. Generally, you're gonna make decisions through motions, on your agenda items. So typically, what would happen as just did happen with regards to the schedule, a member will move. There's a second. A lot of times discussion will take place before that, but the rules, I think, technically say that you make the motion and then you have a second, and then there's a discussion, and then the chair calls for the vote. I've seen a lot of meetings from a lot of different boards and committees. A lot of times the discussion happens first and then the vote. I don't think that there's an issue with that, but technically the rules state that there's supposed to be a motion first, and then a second, and then the discussion. Before the vote, generally the chair will restate the motion so everybody knows what's going on, and then the item will pass or fail based on the vote. Most things require only a simple majority. If you've got a tie vote, then the motion fails. Okay? There are a few sort of motions that I think are worth being aware of. The main motion that that you typically make will be a motion to approve or deny something, or a motion to as you just did a motion to set a schedule. If somebody wants to amend the motion, then a motion to amend would be made by another member. That would have to be seconded, and it would basically take precedence over the original motion that was made. And by precedence, I mean, you've got to make a decision as a committee whether or not you want to amend the motion pursuant to the motion that was made to amend the original motion. So, I motion to approve, the 5-year capital plan, and then somebody wants to amend my motion to say I move to approve the 5-year capital plan contingent upon, X, Y, and Z. The committee's got to make a decision about whether or not they want to add those contingencies before they make the decision about whether or not they want to approve the 5-year plan. So you take that motion first, make a decision about it. You discuss it, you vote on it. If an amendment is accepted, then, for my example, those contingencies would be included in the main motion. The main motion then becomes, you're moving to approve the 5-year capital plan contingent upon, those contingencies. So that's kind of how it works. They kind of stack on each other. So you can do that. You can move to table an item, and usually when you move to table an item, you're tabling for a date certain. So if you feel like you need more information, or the discussion isn't really productive because there needs to be more consideration, then you can move to table an item to a date certain. That works just like any other typical motion. You can move to take an item out of order on the agenda. So if you got A, B, and C, and D, and you want to take D first, you make a motion to move D to be considered first, and you can debate that and move that if it's approved. And then there's the motion to adjourn, which is everybody's usual favorite motion. It's usually hard or very easy to find a second for that. There are some motions that don't need a second, and those are usually for points of order or points of information. So if somebody, if you've got a committee member who's speaking, and they sort of kind of go off topic, then you can make a motion for a point of order, to redirect the discussion, and then the chair would make a decision about whether or not a person is out of order or not. So you don't need a second, and you don't need a vote. That really is kind of like the chair becomes the referee there. Those are the main motions. You can move to reconsider an item as well. And when you do that, generally it has to be done by by a member who voted on the winning side of a motion. And that usually takes a simple majority as well. But those are generally, I think, the motions that you end up running into that are most common. Like I said, Robert's Rules it's thick. There's a new edition every year. Publishers make money on it every year, revising it. There's lots of cheat sheets and stuff. There's plenty of sort of nuances to it, but those are sort of the bare bones of what you probably end up facing. I did send along a cheat sheet for Scott to hand out to you that has everything that I just went over, including the Robert's Rules. But if you've got any questions, I'm certainly here for for any of you to ask. And I think that's all I've got at the moment. So if there are questions now, I'm happy to take them.
Yeah, Chris, it's Scott, the board liaison to the committee. I just have 2 quick questions. Number one, Ms. Giovanelli, the board member, myself as a liaison, and Pat, the recording secretary. Does Sunshine, in terms of us communicating with any individual member of this committee about the committee business, does Sunshine hold any of the 3 of us in play on that?
So the way that the Sunshine Law works is it's got to be members of the same committee. So if you are speaking if you, Scott, or the board secretary or committee secretary, are speaking to an individual committee member, that is fine. If you are talking about the chair, for instance, speaking with Ms. Giovanelli, that is not a Sunshine Law violation. They are not on the same committee. So Ms. Giovanelli is a member of the school board, and the chair is a member of this committee, the construction class committee. So, and as for you, Scott, and for the secretary, you're staff. So you're not an elected official or appointed.
Okay, then my second question would be on public information requests. Since this is a board committee, should any public information requests be sent, like all other requests, to our media relations people first and then for distribution to myself or Pat or for answering?
I would think that Yes, I think that that's the best way for it to work. So if a committee member receives a public records request, I would forward it along to the public records manager. That way, you know, it can be reviewed to see if there's anything that needs to be redacted, you know, if there's anything that needs to be exempt for whatever reason, you know, and then the records could then be distributed. I don't think that there's another procedure for committees.
Okay, so basically, the board chairman, if or any of the committee members received a public information request, they could forward it to the board chairman, who would forward it to Pat or myself, and we would forward it to the district media relations people for the, providing the proper flow of answering the questions and follow through.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, that was it.
That's correct. Yep, no, absolutely. Absolutely.
Anybody else?
Anybody else have any other questions?
I think we're good.
I think we're good.
All right. All right, everybody. I really appreciate it again. I'm really, really sorry. I really expected to be there. This was kind of both unfortunate and unexpected on my part. So I hope you guys have a great meeting. I hope you guys have a great rest of the evening. And if you've got any questions, you know, Scott certainly knows how to reach me and we can work it out. So good luck to all of you.
Thank you. All right, since, I guess I gotta take over now, Ryan left. Back on the committee date meetings, Ryan brought up that our January meeting will be January 1st. So I assume we're not gonna meet that day?
It's the 18th or 15th or something like
Oh, okay, so that one will not be the,
After tonight's meeting, I'll get an invite to all your calendars.
okay.
Because I had to wait till tonight to find out if you guys want to change the date or.
Okay, well, yeah, we'll still be the first Wednesday, just that one,
It's not-
just that one won't be the first Wednesday.
Because the school's off.
Right.
Or winter break.
Well, did you want to make a, I think you're supposed to make a motion if you want to push that one specific meeting.
Yeah, do we need to do that for that? Or is
If we issue a public document, I think they have to vote on the schedule.
It's posted on the calendar, and just as long as we have the regular set, that can be pushed. That can
Right,
be
okay.
provided, something doesn't be voted, but we do need to vote on the public comment format.
Right. So we're not meeting in December, correct?
We don't need December, and we need the third, I think it's the third week of.
January. Okay, all right.
And like you said, I'll.
Just for the new people, you know, just so everybody
I'll get on
knows.
the calendar page tomorrow.
All right, on the public comment format, a couple years ago, we moved it from the end of the meeting up to the front of the meeting. Do we still want to keep it to the front of the meeting or move it back to the back of the meeting? The reason why we moved it to the front of the meeting is because if we had a topic that needed to be discussed here and a public brought a topic here, we could discuss it during the meeting and not, if this really came about when we were voting on the Gateway and Alva site selection. We had a bunch of public comment and we would talk all meeting and then public would be commenting on their ideas and stuff and their concerns and stuff like that, but we didn't have a chance to talk about it as a committee because it was at the end of the meeting. So that's why we then moved our public comment up to the beginning of the meeting. Do we still want to keep it at the beginning of the meeting?
I like it in the front of the meeting because when people come, they maybe can't stay as long, so they like to get their information out and.
Yes.
I think it should stay where it's at.
All right, so I need a motion.
Make a motion to leave the public comment at the beginning of the meeting.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So we're gonna leave the public comment at the beginning of the agenda. So we already did our board member update. Scott, do you have something for us?
Yeah, I'll give you, I just created, this is what I'm presenting to the board briefing on Friday, I believe, but it's just a current project status update. For the 20th, we'll be presenting it. East Zone Middle School, we just received 60% estimates. We're working towards 90%. Our first blush estimate at 60%. The AE is forecasted at $47.7 million construction cost, and the CM is projecting a $52.1 million hard construction cost. Again, that's not total project cost, that's just hard construction costs. And we will do another estimate as the 90% drawings come in as well. So similar to what we did at the MMM High School, you'll see the comparisons between the AE and the CM's estimate, and as we get towards 100% drawings, they actually come closer together, giving us some validation of where the market is going. All permitting has been submitted to all the local agencies out in the Lehigh area. And we're in the process now. We have approximately 29 tortoises we have to relocate. Each tortoise is $1,500, so we're looking at about $30,000 in tortoise relocation. MMM East Zone High School, if you haven't already heard, we've already begun clearing as of September 1st. The construction field trailer will be mobilized on site shortly, and the construction meetings will be moved to the site once the trailer is in place. So we're well on our way to a completion date for, I believe, May 1st of 2021. Now we are starting, we just began some design concepts, meeting with the principal for the staging school. There'll be a freshman staging school in trailers located behind Lehigh Senior High School, and that is to be open August of 2020 for the freshman class of MMM, which will feed in once the hard building is open. South Zone prototype schools, elementary K and middle school NN. Right now, we are completing part of the RFQ process. The board approved the architect's ranking. We actually met today for our first blush of negotiations with them. We will continue negotiation with them. The construction manager ranking is in, and I believe it's scheduled for board approval at the 10/7/19 meeting, and followed by the building official ranking, which is scheduled for approval on the 10/22 board meeting. And that follows in sync with our phase construction process now, where we actually do the design, and we have the architects, the construction manager, and the building official involved in the designs, concepts, all the way throughout that project. So again, that's for the two dual sites down behind Estero High School, prototype elementary and middle. And that's my presentation.
All right.
I have a question. Can you tell me who the CM was ranked number one for the split campus?
Yeah, right now, what's going to the board is ranked number one is Suffolk Construction.
My question is, when's groundbreaking for MMM? I know it's coming up, isn't it?
MMM High School, I believe it's early November. I want to say November 3rd, if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you.
Scott, is there any information on, if I missed it, on Cypress Middle and Franklin Park moving forward on the demo and the?
Yes, ma'am. The state actually sent a representative down from DOE. They walked with Kathy Ebal, the executive director of planning, construction, maintenance, and also Dominic, who is our long-range planner. They met with them, and they walked both campuses yesterday, as a matter of fact. So they made first contact yesterday and have walked through.
Good. All right, so we're gonna go to, do we have any other things to discuss? We need to have everybody think about what we want to talk about for this year. For their next meeting, we'll come up with an agenda, and then we'll go around for a good of the order. Start.
All good for now.
Nothing.
Nothing?
Just my background, I live in Alva, and we've done a lot of work, me personally, and with some other community members. Our Alva school has the barn that we built out there. We house ag programs and stuff like that, and we started the FFA chapter last year at the Alva Middle School. This year, my son moved up to Riverdale, and now we are starting a FFA program at Riverdale High School. Back again, it's been 10 to 15 years since Riverdale had an ag program, so we are in the process of helping Riverdale out, get community support and community sponsorships to help with that program into Riverdale and bring that back to the way it was 15 years ago, when that was a really big agriculture school. So that's what I got, and that's something I'm really involved in with both schools. So
I don't have anything at this time.
I don't have anything.
Nothing?
Nothing.
Nothing at this time.
all right, so then I guess we just need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.